Even at the age of 85, Chuck Norris continues to take on challenges in 2025. Fans appear to be enjoying the action movie star's attitude that age is just a number. Chuck has kept his followers updated, whether it's through a cameo feature or just posting a photo of himself and his family on vacation. Yes, his life has changed significantly from the action-packed parts that made him famous. But he has created a very fulfilling existence for himself outside of Hollywood. Chuck has been busy and full of surprises, despite having a fortune worth tens of millions of dollars, which includes a ranch with its own bottling facility and an automobile collection that would make even millionaires envious. And let's see what the biggest action star in the world has to offer. Chuck only knew how to battle to survive every day of his life before he became famous and wealthy. Born Carlos Ray Norris in 1940, he was the newest resident of Ryan, a small Oklahoma town with fewer than 1,000 residents. The Norris family was quite impoverished, so impoverished that they lacked power and an indoor bathroom in their tiny home. The family had to sleep in their clothes during the bitterly cold winters. The family was so impoverished during one winter that they only ate cornbread and beans for 47 days in a row. Chuck was born with a serious condition called jaundice, as if the harshness of his environment wasn't enough. Additionally, because he weighed just 5 pounds at delivery, the doctors believed he would not make it. Chuck, however, survived because he was a warrior from the start. His mother even thought he had a reason for living. Nobody in that icy house could have predicted what that goal would be. Ray Norris, Chuck's father, had had a difficult existence. He lied about his age to enlist in the Army at the age of 17. He participated in the Battle of the Bulge during World War II and even managed to escape a lethal explosion. However, the trauma remained with him after he returned home. He was forced into the harsh grip of alcoholism as a result. Ray was consuming 2 bottles of whiskey every day by the time Chuck was 9 years old. He was so inebriated that he struck a pole with the family's sole vehicle on a Christmas Eve in the early 1950s. Ray worked in almost 20 different jobs throughout the course of the following 12 years. He was employed as a truck driver, a bus driver, and a mechanic. Despite traveling hundreds of thousands of miles and driving through almost every state in the United States, he never made any money. He occasionally worked 3 jobs at once and frequently put in 14-hour days. His wife made $35 a week as a waitress to help maintain the family. It didn't appear like Ray's troublesome habit would lift the family out of poverty. Chuck's parent filed for divorce as a result of this and other circumstances. Chuck was 12 years old at this point and had already taken on some responsibilities. He took on any work he could to help out financially. Chuck would work in the fields, shine shoes, or deliver newspapers. The youngster had to go nearly 8 kilometers each day to work when he started working at a grocery shop, earning $12 a week. Chuck's father mailed him a crumpled $5 cash instead of showing him for his 13th birthday after the divorce. For many years as a teenager, Chuck held on to that bill as a reminder of his unfulfilled dreams. He was pretty quiet in school. He could go a whole day without talking, according to his teachers. In 7th school, he once puked before presenting a book report because he had severe stage fright. He took a failing grade and declined to try again. Additionally, he avoided particular letters when speaking because of his severe stammering. He weighed less than 100 pounds and was just 5 at the age of 15. He was frequently made fun of by police officers. In front of the girl he liked, one even shoved him into a puddle of dirt. He ate lunch by himself in the boiler room since he was so shy. Unaware that he was a student, the class photographer requested him to step aside during his senior year of high school. Chuck would subsequently say that he was essentially invisible in high school. But after his family relocated to Torrance, California, things started to change. His mother eventually and permanently left his father that year. Living in a new city wasn't much simpler. The family had very little money and lived in a tiny two-bedroom apartment. Chuck kept up his part-time work to provide for his family. Regretfully, he continued to struggle academically. He never participated in clubs or sports and failed his first public speaking course. Chuck, however, would subsequently note that anything noteworthy occurred during high school. He met Diane Holchek, his first wife, at one of the school's Christmas dances. Diane was a cheerleader, and Chuck was 16. He mustered the bravery to ask her to dance. A lengthy friendship developed from that one dance. After 2 years of dating, Chuck asked her to marry him out of concern that she might move on to someone with more money. Shortly after he turned 18, they got married. There were only 23 guests at the wedding. Their honeymoon consisted of a single night at a budget hotel, and they borrowed their rings. Chuck had already joined the Air Force at that point, and he departed for duty 8 days after the wedding, feeling stuck, especially after his inebriated father made a scene at his graduation. He enlisted in the military. The pressure was immense, especially because he had a new wife to support and only $300 to his name. Chuck failed his first military test as a result of this. As one of the few positions open to recruits without specialized training, he was fortunate to be approved as an air policeman during a recruitment drive. In his first 6 months, he was in difficulty twice and failed the fitness test twice. Chuck had never been in combat before enlisting in the Air Force, despite the fact that he would go on to become a well-known action hero. He was really pinned in 12 seconds by a smaller opponent during his first fight training. All of that was about to change, though, and the name was the first step. Chuck was transferred to South Korea in the late 1950s, where the locals started calling him something that sounded like Chuckles, since they couldn't pronounce his real name, Carlos. When his commander heard, he abbreviated it to Chuck. The name stuck for the first time. Chuck even requested that his true name be used in official documents, but his request was turned down. According to the police, nicknames improved morale. Feeling lost one evening, Chuck entered a judo school. He was severely beaten by a smaller teacher. However, something clicked inside of him. The following day, he came back and started taking martial arts lessons seriously with Kim Bachman, a Korean expert. Chuck, which translates to strong fist, was the sole name this teacher gave him. Tong Suo was the martial art he studied in South Korea. His military career came to an end in the early 1960s, and he returned to California with a dream and a black belt. He studied under masters of Shotokan, Cheto Ryu, American Kenpo, and Judo after coming back to the United States. He created his own style, known as American Tang Soo Do, by fusing aspects of each. He applied for a job as a police officer. However, he started his own martial arts school while he awaited a response. He was employed at Northrop Aviation during the day. He also taught karate at night. He had enough students in less than 2 years to leave his day job. Few Americans were even familiar with his martial arts technique, the lesser-known Tanggu, so it was a daring move. This audacious decision would soon pay off, as Chuck established a network of karate schools throughout Southern California, eventually growing to over 30. He taught famous people including Priscilla Presley, Bob Barker, and Steve McQueen. Chuck understood he needed to increase his funds because his family was expanding. At that point, He started participating in competitions. Things did not go well at first. At the International Karate Championships, he lost to Alan Stein and Joe Louis. John Camozzi knocked him out early in another tournament, while Tony Tullis defeated him 3 times. However, these setbacks strengthened his resolve rather than weakening him. Everything started to alter once we were back in the world of tournaments. Chuck began to succeed in the late 1960s. Top boxers like Steve Sanders, Skipper Mullins, and Joe Louis were all defeated by him. He even defeated an older opponent with a judo throw at one occasion, demonstrating that he was expanding his skill set. Instead of standing motionless, he used movement and counters to confront Joe Louis once more. He had defeated Joe Louis 3 times in a row by the end of that year. Chuck was no longer merely an instructor. He was turning into a real winner. Chuck participated in a karate competition in early June 1967 and won 7 fights in a single day. He faced up against Skipper Mullins in his last match. A few weeks later, he went to New York and defeated Steve Sanders at Madison Square Garden in yet another significant triumph. After winning the All-American Karate Open, Chuck met Bruce Lee here. There, Bruce had been demonstrating. Their chat evolved into a friendly rivalry and then into a friendship. They practiced together in Los Angeles for the following 2 years, and Bruce Lee would later acknowledge that Chuck helped him get better at kicking. Chuck lost for the 10th and last time in his career to a rookie fighter called Louis Delgado at the start of 1968. They fought again later that year. Delgado returned with a kick that split Chuck's mouth after Chuck had knocked him down in the opening round. Chuck, however, outscored him and prevailed. Some even speculated that Delgado might have suffered a fractured arm in the altercation. Chuck won the title of professional middleweight karate champion that evening. Chuck defended his All-American Karate title in the Tournament of Champions in April 1968. Despite the challenging round-robin format, he prevailed. He also won the National Tournament of Champions and the International Karate Championships once more in that same year. He made his final title defense on January 17, 1970. Before ending his professional boxing career in 1974. Chuck has never lost a professional middleweight bout at the time he retired. He has fundamentally altered American perceptions of karate. He established the National Tang Soo Do Congress in 1973. He desired something bigger by 1979. Thus, he established the United Fighting Arts Federation and popularized Chunukdo, which translates to Universal Way. This approach blended the principles of self-control, respect, and personal development with powerful fighting tactics. It was formally christened the Chuck Norris system in 2015. Celebrities were among the many who sought to learn from him as his celebrity grew. More than 300 black belts graduated from his karate schools. Chuck even led a black belt team that won 29 straight competitions without losing. His record as a combatant became less significant than his impact as a teacher. When money was scarce, Chuck was persuaded to consider acting by one of his most well-known students, Steve McQueen. Chuck didn't simply walk into Hollywood, though. He had to battle his way in. He had appeared briefly in the spy comedy The Wrecking Crew, starring Dean Martin, in the late 1960s while still working at Northrop Corporation to support himself and operating a few karate schools on the side. Although Chuck had a little part in The Wrecking Crew, it marked the start of something significant, because Bruce Lee himself gave Chuck a call in the early 1970s. Chuck agreed to play the antagonist in The Way of the Dragon because Bruce wanted a true warrior. The film made millions of dollars in Hong Kong and more than $100 million internationally, setting new records. One of the most famous combat scenes in movie history was their last one. It wasn't merely a performance, it was genuine respect, genuine competence, and genuine technique. Two real martial arts experts were shown to the audience on TV. The 10-minute fight turned into a classic. It is difficult to disagree with Chuck's later assertion that it is the greatest martial arts scene ever captured on camera. Chuck had become a celebrity after becoming a stuntman. He did not, however, wish to dwell in Bruce Lee's shadow. He desired to follow his own route, and there was already a rather large person available to assist him in doing so. Chuck's most well-known karate pupil, Steve McQueen, had already encouraged his instructor to pursue acting. He thought there was more to Chuck than combat sequences now. Chuck was urged by McQueen to enroll in MGM's acting courses. Chuck wanted parts with genuine narratives, so he paid attention. He made a short film called Breaker as a result of that mental shift. 77 is a breaker. Chuck wanted a main role that demonstrated more than just fists, but most actors would have passed on it due to its low budget and unknown director. Everyone was taken aback by the movie. It generated enough revenue to demonstrate that Chuck was no longer merely a sidekick. He was capable of carrying a film. He starred in Good Guys Wear Black a year later. The movie didn't start off very well. On June 2, 1978, it was shown on just 5 screens in Denver. The makers tried something daring because the distributors didn't want to handle it. They paid flat rates, hired theaters on their own, and kept all proceeds from ticket sales. Chuck pressed it harder. In a single year, he conducted nearly 2,000 interviews as part of a huge publicity tour. He put in so much work that he ended up with laryngitis in the ICU. But it was worth the amazing effort. Despite only having a $1 million budget, the movie made almost $18 million. The public did not care when his acting was criticized. Something new caught their attention. Unlike the Hong Kong Kung Fu imports, the big screen features a formidable American martial artist. Reporters were informed by Chuck that his character, John T. Booker, was delicate but lethal when provoked. His goal was to emulate Clint Eastwood. When his mentor, McQueen, told him, "Let the co-stars talk. You focus on presence." His career was affected by that instruction, which made that ideal seem less distant. Chuck didn't slow down after the hit. A Force of One debuted in theaters in 1979. Despite having a small budget of roughly $3 million, it made up to $23 million. Audiences adored his portrayal of a karate champion assisting a police officer. The major studios were forced to take notice after he starred in The Octagon and in An Eye for an Eye. Chuck was given a chance by Colia Pictures with Silent Rage, which was shot in just 30 days and brought in over $10 million. Chuck was dispatched to Hong Kong by MGM to star in the million-dollar film Forced Vengeance that same year. Then, in 1983, came Lone Wolf McQuade. Fans praised the film, which was supported by Orion Pictures. Chuck was more than just a martial artist at that moment. He was an all-around action star. The greatest was still to come. Chuck inked a big contract with Cannon Films in 1984. Missing in Action, his debut effort, was a game-changer. In honor of his brother, who lost his life in Vietnam, Chuck dedicated the film. The film did so well in the end that sequels were produced. At this point, Chuck started watching TV. He had finally discovered the right show after initially rejecting the idea, Ranger from Texas. Chuck didn't have to look far for inspiration in his role as Cordell Walker. Part Cherokee, part Irish, a martial artist, and a Vietnam veteran, the persona was quite similar to himself. The actual performance was filmed just a few hours away, from Chuck's Texas home. Great stories, much-needed moral teachings, and lots of roundhouse kicks were all provided by Texas Ranger. In the end, the program ran for 9 seasons and almost 200 episodes. Chuck's personal life was not ideal, despite his increased fame. His first marriage dissolved in the late 1980s after almost 30 years, in part due to an affair that resulted in the birth of his daughter Dina. Chuck, however, never gave up on love, and he met Gina Okey at the age of 58 in the late 1990s. Kelly at a meal. She was on the Walker, Texas Ranger set the very following day, and they quickly started dating. They were married at the age of 61 in the early 2000s. They were shocked to find out they were expecting twins shortly after. The doctor initially believed there was just one baby, but later disclosed there were 2. After both babies were born healthy, and Chuck nearly passed out from shock, he made the decision to take a break from filmmaking in order to raise them. As the decade progressed into the 2010s and 2020s, you would think that Chuck Norris's name would be forgotten. It didn't, because the era of social media chose to honor the legendary Chuck Norris by saturating the internet with memes that highlight his tenacity as a fighter. It was estimated that Chuck had a net worth of about $70 million by the mid-2020s. Fans were taken aback by that figure, but Chuck had made very wise real estate decisions in addition to other reliable investments and years of unreported profits. He was a best-selling author as well. He wrote on a wide range of topics, including politics and martial arts. Titles like Justice Riders and Black Belt Patriotism sold well and increased his earnings. He also made a company off of his image. He started Lone Wolf Ranch Pets and Seaforce Premium Water. His Texas property was the source of the water brand. Inspired by their pets, he and his wife Gina founded the pet food firm. Lone Wolf Ranch in Navasota, Texas is another. It's more than just his house. Additionally, Seaforce water is bottled there. The ranch features a private lake, a large bottling factory, and a martial arts training facility. Like the guy himself, the tens of thousands of acres of land are intended to be self-sufficient. When Chuck Norris was born, he struggled for his life, and he continued to fight until he achieved his goals. He is currently battling aging, and given who he is, he would most likely prevail once more.